We're on Daf Nun, correct? And we started this parak, which is the fifth parak. Am I correct? Parak Rabban Gamliel. What a long, complicated Mishnah, but we'll try. Look, I think this is the kind of Mishnah that after you do the Gemara, then you go back to the Mishnah, maybe you'll understand the Mishnah. I don't know. Anyway, we're up to Nasan Get, which is, if you count up 4 lines before the end of the Mishnah, which is the end of Omid Aleph of Daf Nun, the last word in the line is Nasan. Yes? Nasan Get. Okay, so now is a very strange scenario here where a Yavam gives a get to the Yevamot. The Torah doesn't recognize that. But we saw that Midrabanan, we do recognize the get. And what that means is that he can no longer be miyavim her after he gave her a get, and none of the other brothers can be miyavim her. And that's all Darabanan. On a Deraisa level, the get is meaningless. Now, after he gave her a get, he did what he had to do, and he gave a chalitza. Because in order to be mater holashuk, she must get chalitza. Get is not enough. So the Mishnah says, Ein achar chalitza klum. What does that mean? Normally, when you have a hafkas zika, but it's only derabanan, like for example, get, so it's a partial hafkas zika. Because the Rabbanan are not authorized to remove the zika completely unless there was chalitza. And the Mishnah is pointing out that although at stage 1 he gave her a get, which means there's still something left to the zika, because get on a deraisa level does not have the ability to undermine and neutralize the zika. But now he gave a chalitza. Once he gave a chalitza, then ein achar chalitza klum. Now the whatever was left, the residue of a partial zika is completely undermined, completely neutralized.
Giving the get, just know what he was doing.
I mean, yes and no. You're right in the sense that if you would have asked the Torah what he should do, the Torah's answer would have been chalitza, not get. But if you asked me if there was any legal significance to the get that he went ahead and gave, which we wouldn't have recommended that he give, the answer is yes, there is legal significance. And that's all the Rabban. That's Xera the Rabban. But now he gave a chalitza. I'll read to you what he says over here. Chalitza mafkias hazika legamri. Oh, very good. The afshe chalitza psula. Oh, so now we have a concept called chalitza psula. You remember this was way, way back at the beginning of Yevamot that we said that chalitza is the opposite of yibum, meaning there were 2 alternatives. One was yibum, and he opted for chalitza. That's chalitza kshera. What's a chalitza psula? That's where he had no option of being the Avim. And in this case, once Midrabanan, he forfeited his option to be Yama because he gave her a get, then the chalitza that follows is a chalitza psula. But nevertheless, lo gazu bo chachamim shelo tafkias hazika legamri. So again, we have to go through the sugi of chalitza psula, but in the case of chalitza psula, there are ramifications to the psul of the chalitza. Again, all that is the Rabbanan. On the rice level, chalitza completely severs the zika and undermines the zika. Al-Kain, so now here are the repercussions. Ein maimar ubia sha'asa ba'achrechein kona otzliyovim klal. If you're asking about mistakes, here's a major blunder. What happens? After this whole process, he changed his mind. He said, what did I do? and he decided to give her a mimer, to marry her. Imagine, he divorced her and he gave her chalitza. Now he's giving her a mimer, or bia, which would be yibum d'oraisa. Is ein mimer ubia sha'asa va'achrichen kona osa liyavam klal. Why not? Now he's giving a mimer. He says, "Hareat mekudeshes li b'tabasu b'das Moshe b'Yisrael." Okay, he wasn't meant to do so, but we have a principle called kiddushin tofsin b'chayvei lav. That when you violate a law, like a man is not allowed to marry mamzeres, but he went ahead and he married a mamzeres. We recognize that marriage. She's an Ashes Ish. Now, again, if we would have judged this scenario by the standards of chalitza psula, then when the Rabbanan passel the chalitza, they allow for maimar again on a Rabbanan level to be chal. But in any event, let's go back to the Doraisa level. He gave her chalitza. He's not allowed to marry her. That's a lav. However, a lav is not enough to mafkia tfisis kedushin. So if he gave a maimar or he's mikasha with bia, then the Torah should recognize that marriage. Why does it say here, ein achar chalitza klub, which means if after chalitza he makes a kinyan ichus with her through maimar or through bia, it's not valid. Why not? And the answer is, again, we didn't get to the Gemara yet, it's two blot ahead of us, that this Mishnah was authored by Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that what? Ein kiddushin tovsim b'chayvei lav. For the cholets to marry the chalutza would be a violation of a lav, but Rabbi Akiva holds that if you violate a lav, like for example, the case I gave you before, where he's mekadesh and mamzeres, Rabbi Akiva is not willing to recognize that marriage. It's not effective. It's meaningless. She is not an Ashes Ish because ain't kedushin tosim b'chayvei lav. This Mishnah is a reflection of Rabbi Akiva. Okay. Now we have again the case of a Yavam gave chalitza, and then afterwards he did a maimar, right? Either kesef, shtar, or bia. Cholatz v'osa maimar. See, the Mishnah emphasizes cholatz because the flip side of cholatz would be yibum, would be be'ila. And if he did be'ila, then maimar after be'ila, in the case of the yibum, would be meaningless. But the Mishnah now wants to address the status of maimar after chalitza. If it was maimar after yibum, then maimar after yibum is totally superfluous. It's totally redundant. So that's what's going to bother us here in this Mishnah. Because then he says, oh, nasan get, and then ba. Okay, fine. So we're going to say that once he gave her a get, now I don't know, after he gave her a get, what happened? It says ball, but there's something in the middle here between nasa lo get and ball. This is what I have in my Gemara. I don't know if you have in your Gemara. Im cholatz v'achkach ball. Okay, fine. Cholatz v'achkach ball. So we have cholatz v'achkach also b'maimar. Nosan lo get v'achkach bal, and we have cholatz v'achkach bal. So we have almost every possible scenario combination. But then the next line, Oshe bal v'asa maimar. So what does Maimar do after Baal? I mean, once he's Baal, now we have another case. Nosan get, right? I guess after Baal, he either did a Maimar or he gave her a get. Cholatz. Or instead of giving her a get after Maimar, he gave a chalitza. Maimar is ein achar chalitza klu. All right, so we have to figure out what is the Mishnah adding to me. We had before already Nosan get the cholatz is ein achar chalitza klum, and we said that means that if he gave a maimar or bia afterwards, it's meaningless because ein kedushin tosim b'chai v'la. Now, what's the Mishnah adding now? We're talking about a Yavam who did chalitza, and then afterwards he did, let's say, maimar or bia. Is what's the chiddush now? Ein achar chalitza klum. It sounds like a repetition. But in the previous case, he gave her a get, and then he gave a chalitza. And in this case, he gave a chalitza. No, but in the previous case, we said that after he gave her a get and he gave a chalitza, and then afterwards he did maimar or bia, and he's not kona. How is this different now? Cholatz, and then asaba maimar. I'm just skipping to that phrase of asaba maimar is ein achar chalitza klum. So in the first case, he did a get, and then he did chalitza. In the second case, he started with chalitza. So once he starts with chalitza, then we're going to apply the principle of ein kedushin tosim b'chai v'lav. See, what I don't understand is why does the Mishnah feel compelled to give me both the following two scenarios? We'll call it A and B. Scenario A, he starts with a get, then he gives chalitza, and then he gives maimar or bia. And scenario B is he starts straight away with chalitza, and then he does maimar or bia, without the get first. So I'm not sure why the Mishnah feels compelled to add the case of cholatz, or maybe if I work it backwards, why did the Mishnah feel compelled to start with the case of nosan get? Okay, so I'm leaving that as an unanswered question right now. Unless, gentlemen, you have an answer to that, maybe in one of your notes. What do you have over there, by the way, Steve?
This?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a table.
A table?
That goes through all the.
Oh, this is like a summary, an overview of the whole Mishnah?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Can you find this case in the Mishnah where he pointed out and tell me what he said?
Well, I mean, it's just a case of get. You know, if he does.
He's going sequentially from column number one.
Well, he's just doing all the cases.
No, but I'm saying when I go from column number one to column number two, I'm talking about the same case, but the scenario of the case. What came first and what came second?
Right.
Oh, okay. So he gave her a get, and then
if he did Maimar, he has to give her a get and chalitza.
Okay. So that's a different story.
Well,
but do you have a case where he did a get and then afterwards he gave a chalitza and afterwards he did a maimar?
Yeah, that it doesn't talk about.
Oh, that's not explicit on the case. Because that's the case I'm trying to rack my brains on why the Mishnah it seemed to me that after chalitza, maimar is meaningless because we're holding like Rabbi Akiva that ein kedushin tovsa. So I'm just not sure why the Mishnah has to say the same case twice, and the only difference that I see at this point is whether he started with a get or not.
So which is, where does it say get chalitza and then mimer?
I'm reading here. Let me read it to you again in my Gemara, which, again, I wish I had a photocopy machine here. I actually do have something here, but I'm hate to use it. Nasan get, I'm reading with the commentary here. Nasan get liyavimto, v'achakach cholatzla, ein achar chalitza klum. And I'm reading the commentary here. Shechalitza mafkias azika legamre. Okay. Al kain, skipping a little bit here. Al kain maimar ubia sheyase acharkach. Eino kona osa liyovam klal. Why? Kevan shasura olav bilav, which means that chalitza generates a lav. Ein kedushin tovsim b'chayvei lav kedas Rabbi Akiva. So when he comments or interprets the phrase "ein acher chalitza klum," meaning that a mimer or a bia afterwards is worthless, and it doesn't generate issues because we're holding like Rabbi Akiva, ein kedushin tovsim. Then I fast forward to the next case, and it looks like a repetition, because then he says chalatzla, and then again skipping a few words, the asaba maimar, which he interprets as the acher kein asaba maimar, which he interprets as nosan la kesef o shtar l'shem kedushin, etc., is ein acher chalitza klum. So you're just repeating the same principle, except that you left out the get.
Right.
I don't chap why you need both cases. Because maybe there was a havamina in the case of get, that since the Rabbana recognized the get, and that creates a chalitza psula, because after the get, he's not allowed to be miyabim her. And therefore, we would have said what? That he cannot, after he gives her the get, after he gives her the get. So then we said that the chalitza is not a good chalitza. And therefore, we would say, what was the havamina here? L'gozru chachamim shelo tafkias azika legamrei. Ein mimer uvia shasaba kona. Again, there was a havamina here that this chalitza would not be effective. Therefore, she's not a total chalutza. Maybe she doesn't have she's not categorized with the status of a chalutza. I'm just going through the havamina here, right? And therefore, if the chalitza is not complete, because again, it's chalitza psula, therefore I would say that the zika is still there and he could be miyavim. He could be miyavim. Why? Because we're disqualifying the chalitza. Why are we disqualifying the chalitza? Because it follows a get. So I guess what we're saying is that with Rabbanan, once we recognize the get, she becomes an H's Ach. Therefore, there's no option of Yibum. And if there's no option of Yibum, then the Chalitza is Psula. It's not a complete Chalitza. If it's not a complete Chalitza, then maybe I would think that the Maimar afterwards would be a valid Kedushin. But the answer is that we go back to the Doraisa Halacha, and the Doraisa of the Chalitza is a perfectly valid Chalitza, and therefore she becomes Chayvei Lav as far as the Choletz is concerned, or any of the brothers for that matter. I think we once had a Shita that it might even be chayve krisis. But okay, let's say it's chayve lavim, and that's Rabbi Akiva. So again, let's go over the last part of the Mishnah as far as Amud Aleph is concerned. I mean, the Mishnah continues here for another, I don't know how many lines here on Amud Beis. How long does the Mishnah continue? Oh my gosh, another 20 lines, right? So let's see the last piece on Amud Aleph. Let's read it again. Cholatz v'osa maimar. That's case number one. Case number two is Nasan Get. Oh, Nasan Get Uba. So again, Cholatz v'osa maimar, we said, is more or less in our minds a repeat of what we saw before, but before was a big chiddush because it was get and then chalitza. So we thought the chalitza was psul. But now it starts with a perfectly valid chalitza. That's where the story begins. And then she becomes asura olav. So the maimer, therefore, is a violation of chayve lav. And we're holding like Rabbi Akiva. So that's going to be ainli achar chalitza klub. Okay, then we get to the second case. Nasan get uba. So what's this case over here? Nasan lo get. Oh, see, that's what I told you before, right? How did the Maccabee say, if I told you once, I told you twice? You remember that? Right. So I'm going to tell it to you again, that after the words Nasan lo get, you're going to have to assume there was chalitza, because again, otherwise, how do you read the Mishnah, which says on all these cases, ein achar chalitza klub? So we've got to fit chalitza somewhere in here. So then it was Nasan lo get, then it was cholatz, and then it was ba. Okay, so that again, in my mind, is an exact repetition, word for word, of the previous line in the Mishnah. He has here a diagram that you see of Dalit. Oh boy, that's on a different page. Reuven v'Shimon achim, nasa Reuven es Sarah, meis Reuven b'lo banim, nafla Sarah l'fnei Shimon l'yibum, v'cholatz la Shimon. Ein acher chalitza klum, tahainu shim kidesh osa v'maimer obia eino klum, l'fi shehi asura lo belav, d'lo yivna. Rabbi Akiva, the ain't kedusha totes l'chayvei lav. The afal pisha ein bazech chidush, sherefilu achar chalitza psula kfar kosva mishnah she'ein achrea klum. Maybe he's asking our question. The kolshkein achar chalitza kshera, right? We said that if he gave a get and then he gave a chalitza, the chalitza psula, and yet ein liachar chalitza klum, and the maimer that he does afterwards is meaningless. How much more so if he started with a chalitza kshera? Afilu hachi sidra mishnah b'chol arba dinim shemo'ilim b'yevama maimer get chalitza b'yibum ma'adin im osachreim mashu acher im moil. So again, there are four methods that are relevant to the story of Yevamot, either maimar, or get, or chalitza, or yibu. And the Mishnah is going to list all these different scenarios and ask if he did any of those four, and then afterwards he did something else, whether or not it's meaningful. So the first scenario is he gave her chalitza and then maimar. So that's that mimer is completely meaningless. And we're going like Rabbi Akiva. Fine. Next, Nasan Laget, and then afterwards, Baal. Again, I'm not sure here how to read this Mishnah here. Nasan Get, and then it says Uba. So what does the Mishnah say? Ein achar chalitza klum. But I just don't know how to read the words in the Mishnah. If you could help me out here. Unless, you see, the Mishnah says cholatz, ein achar chalitza klum. Right, the last line on Omid Al. So maybe that word cholatz is going back on the previous case. Let's see if that works. So you have the first case was cholatz, and then he did maimar. And maybe the second case is nasan get, and then he gave a chalitza. And the third case, now it says Baal. What does that mean, Baal? So I think the word Baal means after chalitza. That's what I was insisting before. So nasan lo get. Oh, I see. Maybe we start like this. Cholatz. Let's start from the top. Cholatz. Right? So does everybody, are we all on the same page? With 2 lines plus 2 words before the end of the Yom. Cholatz. I'm just going to underline. Cholatz. Now, I'm going to read it like this. Let's see if this works. Cholatz, like that's your heading. And afterwards, it's the Osa Maimar, Nasan Laget, Ba. Do you follow what I mean? That these are 3 possible second steps, exactly, second step. So the first step was Cholatz. Then what happened afterwards? In any of the following 3 scenarios, the halacha is going to be one and the same. Either after chalitza he did a maimar, or after chalitza he did a get. Again, I think we said this before. I mean, obviously, after he gives a chalitza, get is totally meaningless. But we're going through all the possible scenarios of these 4 ma'aser. Now, the word Baal would go back on the word Cholatz, because we said that Cholatz was the heading. So you have 3 possibilities after Chalitza, because there are totally 4 ma'aser. So he's got Maimar, he's got Get, and he's got Be'ilah. And on all 4 cases here, I mean, all 3 scenarios, I should say, we're going to say Ein liachar chalitza klum. So when we're saying Ein klum, it means the Maimar is klum, it means the Get is klum, it means the Be'ilah is klum. Okay, now I think I'm beginning to get oriented. I'm hoping we've turned the corner, I'm hoping. Okay, now we have a new heading. O, Ba. Okay, now we're going to get all the subsequent possibilities after Be'ilah, which means Yimon. Okay, what happens now? Number 1, Asa Maimar. So I would say that Maimar is meaningless. I mean, he was Baal. If he was Baal, then she's an Eishes Ish, is a full-fledged marriage, and why is he giving a kesef or shtar? I mean, it's a nice matana, but it's nothing. tells you, look in Sir Tov Hey. Ruben v'Shimon Achim, Nasa Ruben is Sarah. Meis Ruben v'Laban enough the Sarah and Shimon Yibim, Yibim also Shimon, Achkach also b'Maima. Oh, so he writes here in the note, Ein Achar Bia Klum, which we don't have in our Mishnah. So he's adding something to the Mishnah, I think. Ein Achar Bia Klum. Therefore, Ein HaMaimer Hazeh Tofes Bo. The Afal Pi She'ein B'din Zeh Shum Nafkamina. Hey, what are you telling me? So Zion the Maimer, Mazel Tov, we'll break a glass. Who cares whether the Maimer is meaningful or not? He was already miyabim. Harisha kol mashi yochol lifol ba Maimer zekvar nifal al yidei ayava ayibum. Sorry, al yidei ayibum nases ishto gimura le'id isa krovos l'chol davar afilu hachi agav shenokta mishnis adin shel cholatz. V'achakach also b'maimar sheyesh b'zachidush, because then we're going like Rabbi Akiva, and if after chalitzi does the maimar is not kona, is therefore nokat gam es adin shel baal v'nasa maimar afal pishem b'zachidush. Okay then, so I think we're getting the flow of it. Meaning there's a certain symmetry here. There's cholatz v'achkach also b'maimer, and then there's bal v'achkach also b'maimer. And he's telling you, ein li'achar bia klum, and the maimer is meaningless. Who cares? You're wasting your ink, and wasting my time and your time. But that's what the Mishnah does in order to maintain the symmetry of cholatz v'achkach also b'maimer, bal v'achkach also b'maimer. Nasan get. Okay, let's figure this one out. He was miyabim and he gave her a get. She's migureshes. V'kevan shabia sha'asa shimon ibia kshera, varei mafkia ezika seimul gamre, nechsheves sarki ishto. Right? When he tears loose shuk beget, shenos lachkach below chalitza. V'im yirtza achkach lach zero. Here's an interesting question. Again, I don't know how he's fitting this into the Mishnah, but after he gave her a get, right? So there was yibum, there was get, and now he wants to remarry. What would you say? He says, "Im yirtza achkach lach zira, mach zira. The ena asura lo kekol bala saget shasur liyimu." You hear what he's saying? After a Yavam gives a Yevama a get, he's not allowed to marry. But in this case, the Yavam was miyabim her, and then he gave her a get, so he's allowed to remarry. So again, if before the Yibum he gives the Yevama a get, he's not allowed to marry. And if I understand correctly, forever and ever, he's not allowed to marry. But if instead of giving her a get immediately, when she fell for Yibum, he first was miyabim her, she now is ishto, and now he gives her a get, he's allowed to marry. Again, where he's getting this from, I don't know. I didn't see that in the Mishnah. Okay, fine.
I thought we did that somewhere else.
Right. But I just don't know if it's here in this Mishnah that he emes it is. I'm not denying it, but I'm just wondering why how does that add to our understanding of the Mishnah? Okay, then, so that's the case of Nasan Get. Right? So it means after Yibum, he gave her a get. Next. So we're still on ball, right? That's still our koteret. So we had ball and maimer, ball and get. Now we have ball and chalitza. In ball v'yakach chalatz lo, ein achar chalitza klum. I'm just not sure how to interpret the words ein achar chalitza klum. He was Mekayim Yibum, but now he gives a chalitza. So what is the phrase ein achar chalitza? We said that after chalitza there was maimer. Then I understand that you want to disqualify the maimer based on Rabbi Akiva after chalitza. But now, what does it mean ein achar chalitza klum? Unless it's going back. Oh, I have an idea. Can I bounce this one off you? Maybe the phrase ein achar chalitza klum is going back to chalatz. Right? So chalatz, and then he did a maimar, or be'ilah, or he gave her get. 1 second, what's the significance of get? We said that get is meaningless, correct? And maybe there's a chiddush that he can remarry or whatever it might be. So in all these cases, ein achar chalitza klum. And in the case of be'ilah, we're saying ein achar bia klum. Again, I don't know where that appears in the Mishnah, but that's what we're fitting into the Mishnah. It's like chisurei mechzer here. Okay, so now I'm going to read to you the Masechet here, and I'm assuming that we're going back to the case of chalatz, that he started with chalitza, and whatever he did afterwards is meaningless, whether he gave a maimar because of Rabbi Akiva, or he gave her get, that doesn't add anything. And even if he was Baal, that's also Rabbi Akiva. Okay, so let's see what he says. Ein achar chalitza shenasta betchila klum, v'chein ein achar habe'ilah shenasta betchila klum. Right, that's called ein achar bia klum, which we said that afterwards, maimer is meaningless. Get would be a regular get. And chalitza is meaningless because chalitza doesn't do anything in a case of an ashes. Chalitza shenasta tchila. Oh, that was going back, I think, to the first case. So he started with chalitza. If kias hazika legamri, came maimar ubia sha'asa achrel l'shem yibum enom konim klal. Again, this is Rabbi Akiva. K'mochein afim asa osam l'shem kiduche Torah lo kanu. In other words, what was his intention? You know, usually when we speak about maimar or bia, we're talking about within the context of yibum, and he had an intention to start the process of yibum. But now we're saying something else. Let's say he did a maimar and bia l'shem kiduche Torah. He wants to be mekadesh. This is going to be my marriage part. But the problem is that he already gave a chalitza. And that generates a lav of what's called the shuv lo yivni. Came in shalobana shuv lo yivni. Is mishum, why is it that this kiddushay Torah that he has in mind is invalid? Mishum she'asura al hayavam b'lav. Okay, good. I'm happy that we're on the right track. Okay, that makes sense. Interesting. It's like you meet a woman on the street and you give her a get. For who adin gam kishabal. Okay, now we go to the next category, koteret. He started with be'ilah. Shekana also leishus upaka azika shenasta ishto gemura is ein chalitza lachrea matirosa. Can't be matir in Asian with chalitza. Mochein haget shenasan lachrea matir also linasi below chalitza. Kechol Asian sishim skaresh to get. Kevin shabeila rukna es hazika. Right, so there's no need for an additional chalitza to break up the zika because he married her, and once he married her, that's it. The zika is gone; it evaporates. V'chein rashoylach zira. Oh, this is what we said about the drabanan. That normally, if a man, a yavam, gives a get to his yavama, he's not allowed to marry her. But here, Rashoylach zira, achrichedi can remarry her after the get. The eina ki yavama shenasan la get she'ena roy liyabma. Why? Because here he was miyabim her, and she's an Eishes Gemura. Now he gives her a get. He's allowed to remarry. Gam maimar she'osach abilei nekona shekvari ishto misha shebal also. He was kona as an isha with be'ilah. So then, a subsequent mimer is totally superfluous. Okay, now we turn to Amud Beis. Now he has an introduction, interesting enough, to the second part of this Mishnah. He says, Ata ba'a ha-Mishnah levayer shechaluka zu is bara be'maimar the get anasim b'yavama levein be'ila v'chalitza. Maimar get, but now I think he's going back to the beginning of the Mishnah. Right? What do we have at the beginning of the Mishnah? Yeah, we had Asaba Maimar, and then we had Nasan Get. Right, so in a case where he started with a get, then there is significance to Maimar. She's going to have to get another get besides the chalitza that she needs. Or he has a case of Asaba Maimar, and then he did chalitza, and she still needs a get because of the Maimar. So as far as Maimar and get are concerned, if he started, the kickoff was Maimar or get, then afterwards he needs, or she needs a get, a second get, she needs chalitza, as opposed to kicking off with be'ilah chalitza, where we said, ein li'achar be'ilah klum, v'ein li'achar chalitza klum. So he says, chaluka zu, that contrast, kayemes gam kishahayu lemes shtei noshim ha'asuros atoli nosei ad shetisyabim achas mihen o shetichlots achas mihen li'achei ames. Okay, so if a man dies with two wives, let's call it, let's say he's married to both Sarah and Rivka. So Rivka can't get married until Sarah is either Misyabemes or Cholefes. So what does it say in the Mishnah? Achas Yevama achas. What does this word achas mean? He says, achas hi chaluka kasher mestar achrav Yevama achas liyavam echad v'chein achas l'shtei yevamos liyavam echad. All right, so now he's saying the following. This is sort of like the Mishnah's introduction to the second half of the Mishnah. And he's saying that whatever distinctions we made between Maimer and Get on the one side and Be'ila and Chalitz on the other side, those distinctions apply whether it's one Yavam with one Yavama or it's one Yavam and two Yavamos. Right? One Yavam, let's start the other way. Whether it's one Yavam and one Yavama or one Yavam and two Yavams, meaning there's a tzara. So now the Mishnah is going to go through all the different scenarios in the case of two Yavams. Until now, we had all the different scenarios in the case of one Yavam, and now we have two Yavams. Again, as an introduction, he says, Al Pi Seder. The Seder is going to be Maimar, Get, Chalitza, and Be'ila. So it seems that all the cases and the scenarios that we had in the case of Yevama Achas and Yavam Echad apply to Shtei Yevamos and Yavam Echad. But apparently in the case of Shtei Yevamos, we're going to have additional scenarios, I guess. So again, what's the say there is Maimar, Get, Chalitza, and Be'ila. Also Maimar Bezu, Umaimar Bezu. Well, this guy wants to take both of them. In Yibum, we said you cannot be miyabim both sorrows, right? The other tzara becomes an Eishes Ach. But he went ahead. I'm always asking Jeff's question, why did he do this? It's so stupid of him. If he thought that Maimar was a Kenyan like Yibum, then why is he doing Maimar to both Yevamot? I mean, I understand what he's motivated by. He wants to marry both of them, but he can't do that. So also Maimar Bizu. Umaimar Bizu, he says here, Tzricho Shnei Gitin. Right? We would say, L'chora, that the second one that he did Maimar to doesn't require a get. So this has to do with another machlokus. I don't remember where we learned this, but yesh Maimar acha Maimar, ein Maimar acha Maimar. In any event, right now we're going to assume naively that the Mishnah is reflecting the possibility that you could have a second Maimar. And the Rabbanon, we're going to recognize both the first and the second Maimar, and therefore both of them need, each one respectively, obviously, needs a get. Now, let's say he smartens up, he gets a good attorney to give him counsel, and they tell him, look, my friend, Maimar is not enough. You need Yibum. You want to marry this woman, do Yibum. Okay, so now ready for Yibum. He's not going to be able to do Yibum. Because once he does a Maimar to the second Yevama, again, when I say second, and that is not which is which, but right, he does Maimar to one and the other. So each Maimar now generates an Isur Yibum vis-a-vis the other tzara. Do you follow? In other words, the Rabbanan are upgrading the Maimar l'chumra to the status of Yibum. And once he's miyabim one of the tzaras, he can't be miyabim the other one. So if he wants to get smart after the double maimar and fulfill yibum, he can't do so. He's closed the door for his own possible kiyum of mitzvahs yibum. Even though, again, if you ask me what his intention was, he wanted to be miyabim both of them. At the end, he's not going to be able to miyabim any of them. Because the Rabbanon are going to recognize each of these two maimars, and then any one of these two tsaros was, so to speak, rejected by the maimar of the other one, because that maimar on a Rabbanon level is considered like yibum, and once he chooses one of the various yevamos to be miyabim, or he can no longer have yibum with the other ones. On the other hand, both girls are going to need gitin. I think only one of them will need chalitza. Let's see if I'm right. Is tzrichos shnei gitin v'chalitza. Oh, v'chalitza, not two chalitzas, but one chalitza. Why? Because there's never a situation where you have to give chalitza to two yevamos. One chalitza patas up the other yevamo. They both need gitin because we're going to. Gitin because we're going to recognize the two mamorim on a Rabbanan level, and yesh maimer acham maimer. Each maimer in itself is valid on a Rabbanan level and requires a get. But as far as chalitza is concerned, one chalitza will suffice. So that's as far as maimer is concerned. Oh, I see. What we've covered now is maimer, and then afterwards maimer. Now we have to cover the other possibilities, maimer, and then get. So Maimar Bizu, so he chooses one of the two Yevamos, and he gives her a Maimar, and Viget Lizu. Well, let's figure out what's going on here. He's giving a get to the second. In his, it's so fakrumt over here. In his mind, he's being Mekayim the mitzvah yibum. So what relationship does that have with the second, with the other wife, with the Yevama Shniyah, the Tzara? I'm going through Jeff's question in my mind over and over again. What was the man thinking? Why did he give a get to the other Yevama after he gave Maimar to this Yevama? I'm just throwing out Balabatish as far as he thought that if you have two Yevamas that fall for Yibum, you give one Yibum, you give the other Chalitza. So instead of giving a Yibum, he gave a Maimar, and now he's giving Chalitza to the other one. But instead of Chalitza, he gives her a get. That's another mistake. I mean, if Lishitaso, there's still a Zika left, even after he did Maimar, which really is true, because the Maimar is not valid Doraisa, so there still is a Zika. So give a Chalitza, he gave her a get. So Mud Nazach, give a get. But again, we had many occasions where we said that a man who's a Yavam gave a get to his Yevimta. We don't know why he did that. We'll say that he mistakenly thought that get substitutes for Chalitza. But here in this case, it's a little bit muddy, because if he was Mekayim Yibum with the first wife, why does he have to give Chalitza, and in this case a get, to the second wife? The man is a little bit deranged. I won't say deranged, but he's a bit of an Amoris. Okay, so now what happens? Tzricha get v'chalitza. Okay, I assume tzricha get means for that one woman, well, what do we want to call her? Rivka, who had Maimar, she needs a get. And now we go over to Sarah. Now what did Sarah get? Sarah got a get. But she's going to need Chalitza. Why? Because again, the Maimar does not remove Zika, because Midoraisa Maimar is nothing. So there's a Zika even to the other one. So she needs Chalitza. Wait a second. Or maybe Chalitza means either one. Yeah. I think you're right. Chalitza means either one. He gave Maimar to one of them. On a Deraisa level, that doesn't help him at all. It doesn't help the Yevamis at all to allow them to get married. Well, no, right? So they need a Chalitza. So one Chalitza should be enough. So what's the chiddush in this case? He gave a get to the second one, but the Zika is still alive and well, and she or one of them, whatever, needs chalitza. So was there a havamina that there would be no need for chalitza? No, that doesn't make any sense, because without chalitza she can't get married, and a get is not a substitute for chalitza.
But this is saying because he gave a get to the second one,
Right.
he can't.
Oh, you want to know about
Hebrew,
you?
the first one now. He can only do.
Let me think about that. Since he gave a get to the second one, so that's going to prohibit Yibum to the first one. All midrabanan. Right. Okay, so it's still in Maimar. So we had so far Maimar and then another Maimar. We had a Maimar and then a get. Now we're going to have Maimar and Be'ila, correct? Because there are four Maisim. There's Maimar. We have to have on the board here. I have to get a board here. Maimar, get, Chalitza, and Yibum. So Maimar Bezu, Ubal, Etzu. Okay, let's stop for a minute. Let's figure it out. On a Doraisa level, no question about it, he was Miyabim. Well, what do we call her? There was Rivka and Sarah, he was Miyabim Sarah, if we go in. But the problem now is, right. So on a Doraisa level again, Sarah, if what? If after Rivka, Maimon to Rivka was Miyabim Sarah, Sarah certainly needs a get. That's for sure. She's a full-fledged Ashes each. Now Rivka got what? She got a Maimon. She also needs a get on a Drabanan level. But 1 second, what about Chalitza? So the first one needs Chalitza. Maiber Bezu, she'll need Chalitza. No. She doesn't need Chalitza because he was Baal Zu. So why do we need Chalitza? Tzrichos Shnei Gittin, that I understand. But why the Chalitza? Just 1 second. Baal. If he was Baal, then that's Yibum Dorais. So what's the Chalitza here? 1 second. I'm not clear about this Chalitza. How are we doing on the clock? Okay, so we might not even finish the Mishnah today. Chalitza. He says, "V'chein tzricha." Oh, tzricha achas mehen chalitza. Okay, that we know already. Okay, that's no big deal. Lahatir shteyem. The get bilvad lo moed. Why not? Why not? Get bilvad lo moed. Kevon shabeila lo gamya says zika. Why? Because he gave a mimer to the other one? Well, what does he mean, lo ifkila gamya says zika? Well, zika. What does this mean? The beila lo ifkila gamya says zika. I don't get it. Got to be because mimer to the first. So maybe midrabanan, since he did a mimer to the first one, he cannot be miyavim the second one. So midrabanan, we don't recognize the yibum to the second one, and therefore she needs chalitza. I mean, that's the best I can do here, but he doesn't spell it out. Do you have anything in your notes, maybe? Or Mitch, you have anything in Rabbi Steinsaltz?
I don't see anything.
You just see there's a footnote here. So wait, let's go back for a minute. I mean, I know we're pressed for time here, but what was the case of Maimer Bizu, Umaimer Bizu? There also we required chalitza, yeah, but there was no be'ila. So if there's no be'ila, obviously you need a chalitza. But here there was a be'ila. Okay, so that remains a question, which hopefully will clarify with the passage of time. Let's just finish the section. Maimer Bizu. V'cholatz lezu. Okay, so he did a mimer, which midrabanan is considered like a kinyan, is therefore rishona tzricha get, and the other one got chalitza. So the chalitza, the second one, patters up the first one, but the first one, because of a mimer, requires a get. Okay, then that's pretty clear. So the one case that we don't understand is why, in the case of Maimer Bezu Bal as Zu, why is there a need for chalitza? And for some reason, we're not recognizing the Be'ila as Yibum, and we're still requiring chalitza even after the Be'ila. And the only answer we come up with is because there was a Maimer, but we're not sure what the mechanics is, why that Maimer should upset the Yibum, which the Torah recognizes, and therefore require chalitza. That's not clear to us. Okay, then, so that's where we're going to stop. If you could help me by making a note of it. Tomorrow is what? Wednesday? Okay, I'll write down Wednesday here. And that's where we'll pick it up tomorrow.
Gonna think that it's gonna be just chalitza d'Rabbanan. They require it because somehow
But because of the mimer to the first one?
yeah, somehow the